Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're asking a question that could completely rewrite modern history. What if Britain had never lost its empire? This was the British Empire in 1921. At its greatest extent, it covered about 35.5 million square kilometers and governed roughly 458 million people, nearly 1/4 of the world's population. Its merchant ships crossed every major ocean. Trade routes connected Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas, making Britain the center of global commerce for generations. But Britain's influence wasn't measured only by territory. Its language, legal system, financial institutions, and political ideas spread across much of the world, and many remain influential today. London became the financial capital of the world. Banks, factories, shipping companies, and investors turned the city into the heart of an expanding global economy. Among all British territories, India was the most valuable. Often called the jewel in the crown, it supplied resources, soldiers, and access to vital trade routes across Asia. The empire stretched across every inhabited continent, from Canada to Australia, from Egypt to Hong Kong. The British flag flew over an extraordinary share of the world. Yet history shows that no empire lasts forever. As the 20th century unfolded, Britain's greatest challenge would come not from expansion, but from survival. 2 world wars left Britain victorious, but deeply weakened. The enormous financial cost and human losses made governing a global empire increasingly difficult. After the Second World War, colonies across the empire began seeking independence. In our timeline, the British Empire gradually dissolved. But what if history had taken a different turn? The Second World War left Britain victorious but exhausted. Large parts of its cities had been damaged, its economy was burdened with debt, and rebuilding the nation became the government's top priority. Maintaining a global empire was becoming increasingly difficult. The war had also transformed the global balance of power. Britain relied heavily on financial support from the United States, while Washington emerged as the world's leading economic power. For the first time in centuries, Britain was no longer the dominant force in global finance. Then came one of the empire's greatest turning points. In 1947, India gained independence after decades of political negotiations and growing nationalist movements. For many historians, this marked the beginning of the end of the British Empire. India was only the beginning. Over the following decades, countries across Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean achieved independence. The red areas on the map gradually disappeared, reshaping the political landscape of the world. Within just a few decades, an empire that had once ruled nearly 1/4 of the Earth's land had transformed into a much smaller group of independent nations, connected mainly through the Commonwealth. The age of colonial empires was coming to an end, or so it seemed. The Suez Crisis of 1956 became another defining moment. When Britain and France attempted to regain control of the Suez Canal, pressure from both the United States and the Soviet Union forced them to withdraw. The crisis demonstrated that Britain could no longer act alone as a global superpower. Compare these two maps. On the left stands the British Empire at its greatest extent. On the right is the modern United Kingdom. Few empires in history have experienced such a dramatic transformation within a single century. But history is often shaped by a handful of critical decisions. What if one of those decisions had been different? What if Britain had found another way to preserve its global influence without clinging to the old colonial system? Imagine British leaders choosing a new strategy. Instead of ruling distant colonies directly, they begin negotiating a new political union, one based on partnership, representation, and shared institutions. Not an empire of subjects, but a federation of equal members. This is where our timeline changes. From this moment forward, everything you are about to see is alternate history, a scenario based on historical possibilities rather than historical fact. So, what if the British Empire had transformed instead of disappeared? History has just changed. Instead of watching its empire disappear, Britain chooses a completely different path. Rather than holding on to colonies by force, it begins transforming the empire into something entirely new, an imperial federation. In this alternate world, representatives from Britain, Canada, India, Australia, South Africa, and other member nations gather in a common parliament. Each government keeps control over its domestic affairs while sharing decisions on trade, defense, and foreign policy. The empire slowly evolves into a multinational federation. Instead of breaking apart, the world's largest trading network grows even stronger. Goods move freely between member states, investment flows across continents, and major ports become more connected than ever before. The Federation's economy begins expanding at an extraordinary pace. Massive ports, railways, highways, and shipping lanes link 4 continents together. Businesses enjoy access to an enormous internal market, reducing trade barriers and strengthening economic cooperation. For many companies, the Federation becomes the most attractive place to invest. London remains one of the world's leading financial capitals, but it is no longer carrying the burden alone. Cities like Toronto, Delhi, Singapore, Sydney, and Cape Town grow into powerful financial and technological centers, creating an economy unlike anything seen before. With universities and research centers spread across the Federation, scientific collaboration accelerates. Engineers, doctors, and researchers share knowledge more easily, leading to faster advances in medicine, aerospace, artificial intelligence, and clean energy. Innovation becomes one of the Federation's greatest strengths. Defense also changes dramatically. Instead of separate military forces acting independently, member nations contribute to a unified defense structure. Together, they operate one of the largest naval and air forces in the world. Military bases stretch from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Strategic locations in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and the Indo-Pacific allowed the Federation to protect global trade routes and respond quickly to international crises. Its worldwide reach rivals that of any superpower. But this raises an even bigger question. If Britain had never truly lost its empire, would the United States still have become the world's undisputed superpower? Or would it have faced a powerful democratic rival from the very beginning? In this timeline, the 21st century may no longer be dominated by a single nation. Instead, global leadership could be shared between 2 enormous powers, the United States and the Imperial Federation. Competition would likely focus on technology, trade, diplomacy, and influence, rather than territorial expansion. A world with 2 democratic superpowers would look very different from our own. Instead of leading the international system alone, the United States would likely share that responsibility with the Imperial Federation. Competition would remain intense, but cooperation might also become essential. New York and London could become twin financial capitals of the world. Investors, multinational corporations, and global markets would likely divide their attention between these 2 economic giants. Rather than replacing one another, the cities might grow stronger through competition. China's economy might still experience remarkable growth. However, expanding into global markets could become more challenging if another massive trading bloc already connected Europe, Asia, Africa, and Oceania. Its strategic environment would almost certainly be more competitive. Russia might also face a very different geopolitical landscape. A unified federation with influence across several continents could reshape the balance of power throughout Europe and the Indo-Pacific. Diplomacy and military planning would likely become even more complex. International politics would no longer revolve around a single dominant power. Instead, major decisions on trade, security, climate policy, and global development could emerge from negotiations between several influential democratic blocs. The world might become more balanced, but also more complicated. Scientific cooperation could flourish across the Federation. Researchers in Britain, India, Canada, Australia, Singapore, and South Africa might share funding, expertise, and infrastructure on an unprecedented scale. Together, they could accelerate breakthroughs in medicine, space exploration, and advanced technology. With people, ideas, and businesses moving freely, the Federation would become one of the most culturally diverse societies in history. That diversity could fuel creativity and innovation, but it could also require constant effort to build trust, representation, and social cohesion. Running such a vast federation would never be easy. Different regions would have different priorities, economies, and political traditions. Debates over taxation, immigration, defense spending, and representation could become some of the greatest challenges facing the Union. History teaches us that size alone does not guarantee success. The larger a nation becomes, the more difficult it is to govern effectively. Whether this federation succeeds would depend not on its territory, but on the strength of its institutions and the willingness of its members to cooperate. From space, the world might appear more connected than ever. Trade routes, research partnerships, and diplomatic ties could link continents in ways we've never seen before. Yet even in this alternate timeline, one truth remains unchanged. Every generation must decide what kind of world it wants to build. By Arlene Arlieu! This alternate imperial federation would likely be one of the most powerful political and economic unions ever created. Its influence would stretch across multiple continents, connecting billions of people through shared institutions, trade, and technology. But power alone does not determine whether a nation succeeds. The Federation's largest cities could become some of the most advanced urban centers on Earth. London, Delhi, Toronto, Sydney, Singapore, and Cape Town might compete to become leaders in finance, science, and innovation. A shared network of universities and research institutions could create one of the greatest knowledge systems in history. Students and scientists from different continents would have more opportunities to collaborate and exchange ideas. The Federation's global infrastructure could also allow it to respond quickly during international crises. Natural disasters, pandemics, and humanitarian emergencies might receive faster coordinated assistance from member nations working together. However, this world would not be perfect. A federation this large would face difficult questions. Who has the most influence? How are resources distributed? And how can different cultures and regions feel equally represented? Maintaining democracy across such a massive territory would be one of its greatest tests. Millions of citizens would need to believe that their voices matter, not just in the most powerful cities, but everywhere. So, which timeline would be better? Our world, where former colonies became independent nations, or this alternate world, where they remained connected through a global federation? There is no simple answer. Alternate history is not about proving that one path was right or wrong. It helps us understand something much more important. Small decisions made by leaders and societies can change the future of billions of people. Empires rise, empires fall. Countries change, but the forces that shape history remain the same. Human ambition, cooperation, conflict, and the desire to create a better future. So, what do you think? If Britain had transformed its empire instead of losing it, would the world have become more peaceful and prosperous? Or would a global federation of this size have created even greater conflicts? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next journey through history.